Right, what we're going to do today, we're going to service the car with electronic park brake. Most of the time you'd use a snap-on bit of kit to put it into service mode, but most cars have got a back door which they've put in. So to do it, if you haven't got a diagnostic tool to do the electronic park brake, put it in service mode, what you would do is turn the ignition on one. Don't start the car. I'm just going to cover this up in a minute because I've got to put my code in. Right, what you've got to do is basically on the park brake, hold it down. 1, 2, foot on the accelerator. 1, 2. Stop, start, watch the display. The rear park brake's rewinding. It'll come up with a warning on the dashboard and it will say it's in service mode. Keep it on the dashboard a minute. There you go, that's the bit I want you to capture. It's now in service mode. So that is a backdoor way of getting in if you haven't got a diagnostic tool. Now once we've done the electronic park brakes, we're going to service it today, clean it, make sure all the shims and that are perfect. We're going to recalibrate the electronic park brake with this, but I'll show you that later. Now obviously before you take the wheels off, use good quality jacks. Make sure you've choked the vehicle at the front. We've got some massive things on the front. You've obviously loosened these off with a the wheel's free at the moment. When you use the Land Rover wheel nuts, make sure you use good quality ones, don't get aftermarket, but every year I put new ones in regardless. Now that's the rear brakes we're going to service today. Now before you work on the car, I always put another jack underneath to make sure. Right, she's underneath. Could have been a bit lower, but that will hold it. So basically, as I've had the car from you, what we're going to service today is the complete rear caliper. It's going to get an overhaul. Going to check the pads as well for wear. Looking at the pads now, they've only got to 15% wear, I should think, so they're virtually brand new, but I'm going to take it all apart. That's the bit I'm going to service as well, because there's a part in that electronic park brake that actually rusts. That's what causes them to fail. The whole disc is going to get cleaned, that's going to get cleaned, all taken apart. So I'm going to strip it down. Well, the electronic park brake module is this. This is what I'm going to focus on today. Now a lot of people, these fail, and they're about £180 I think to buy. Now they fail because I got this from a breakers and I thought, well hang on, what's causing it to fail? Now that motor there spins round and retracts the piston inside. Now on this one here, can you see it's like mild steel and it's rusted away? So what I'm going to do is take mine apart today and coat that in grease, because those teeth, can you see they've gone? Now that was off a car which was 4 years old, and I don't want mine to go, so that's the Achilles heel, which you want to take these off and put loads of copper grease on to stop that teeth getting worn away. There is a O-ring seal around there which I'm going to pay a particular attention to make sure there's no water getting inside. But I think you still get condensation from when you go through a flood or rain, and that bit, you see, it's totally rusted. So that's not a good design on the electronic part brake. What we're going to do, we're going to take the caliper out first. So what you need is a 13 and a 17 mil. Obviously you've got the car jacked up, you've got the axle stand underneath. So this has got to be undone first. I was going to do the top one first, but leave that in. And the bottom one, you've got to come out now, because you're the hardest one to get to, but it's an easy job. Now this caliper hasn't been off the car since it was new, so I'm going to check all the grease points, especially the shim plates. Make sure they've got some nice clean grease in. With you get brake dust everywhere, which that needs cleaning out. Hang on, baby. Put that onto there. That'll come out now. Actually, that's not too bad. Going to put new bolts in anyway when I do it. Never use the same ones, because when you torque them up, bolts can stretch. Just undo this one. Now when you take the caliper off, make sure you can support it, don't let it hang. So as this is the first time I'm doing this, actually what I've got to do first is undo the electronic part brake. Right, we've got the harness ready to hold the caliper. First of all, we're going to take off the wiring for the electronic part brake, unclip that, just put that up there. Now because it's taking these two bolts out, they're in the tray, this will come out. Now what we've got to do is suspend it. So what I'm going to do first is just make sure this is tied up. You don't want the caliper hanging by the lines. Well, there you go. That's why you need to clean up your caliper. So we're going to strip all the other bits first down, then we're going to take that thing apart. That's the brake sensor, which I've undone. Now this here, we're going to tie this up so it's nice and secure. So the main thing with brakes, take the pads out first. Now when the pads come out, they've got to go back in exactly the same way. So that's the offside. So what I'm going to do is put this on the floor, and this is the inside. Never put the brakes around the wrong way. So that's the inside one. Shims, this is the whole reason why you need to be doing it. Look at that. That's all brake dust. We're going to get those nice and clean. Again, that's the bottom. This is the top. I'll just put them that way. We're going to take this off now. Carrier. You can see all the brake dust which has accumulated, and these in particular, we're going to take these apart, and these are going to get nice grease on there. Now the grease is very thin LM grease. It's not copper grease. They've got to move smoothly. So what I'm going to do is take that off, give it a wash. That's all going to get washed, and that's all going to come apart. Now because we're taking the carrier off, I always put new bolts in. That's the part you need for the carrier. Ends in 13. use genuine. Now what I do before I do it, make sure you got a good socket, and make sure with a new bolt the socket is a good fit, which it is. So when you take the old ones out, you need a breaker bar, because they're actually done up to 110 Newton meters with 120 degree angle. So they're not too tight, but you can't literally do them with a normal. You've got to use a monkey bar. The last one to do is the top one. Make sure the socket's on, and just undo the thing. And this is why you need to put new bolts in all the time. Never use the old ones. Right, we can get a socket on that now. Monkey bar is done. Oh, we do the top one first. I'm going to put all the old bits into the tray. Obviously, when you put them all back together, you're going to use new ones. That's the original one. You can see it's had its day. A lot of people would probably use the existing bolts, but I think they're about £2 or £3 to buy. So it's a no-brainer. Just put new bolts in all the time. That one can probably be done by hand now. Now once we've got this carrier off, we're going to take the disc off, clean inside the stone shield, get all the existing brake dust away. As I said, this has never been done. This is on a Range Rover supercharged 5 litre, by the way. Alright, that's the carrier, which is going to get overhauled in a minute. So we're going to do a before and after. Leave that there. Right, now first I'm going to take the disc off, which we need a special tool for that, hex. To get the disc off, you've got to use a T50 hex head. Now, if my memory serves me right, these are only torqued up to 11 Newton meters, so they ain't that hard to undo. The thing is, because we haven't got the brakes on, how can I stop that turning with no brake? I think if I lower the other side down, it might grip the wheel a bit. Right, the whole point of us servicing the car, that came off a breakers. That's the electronic park brake module. Power in. There's a rubber belt in there, which never snaps because I've taken 2 apart before. Once you break that off, you can't put it back on, but the belts are okay. That pin there rusts away and it just spins. So what the whole idea is, we're going to take this one apart and put some grease around. Put some grease around the nipple. We're going to use is a T30. I'll have to crack this off. I don't know how I'm going to do this yet because it's going to be quite tight. There you go. These are only done up to 11 Newton meters, so they're not that tight. Just undo these a little bit. Now this has never been off since the car was new, and I've always wanted to do this. Let's get that into there. Obviously a T30 we're using. Now there's no ring in here, which you have to replace. Stops the water getting in. Well, I'm just going to put that into the magic tray. And that one's going to come off in a minute. Obviously we've got the caliper suspended, so it's not pulling on the brake lines. So this is the Achilles heel of all electronic park brakes. So this module, oops, comes out. Right, now what happens with this, let me just bring it out in the light a minute. Now can you see we've got little bits of rust forming there already, and that's the Achilles heel. That will slowly rust away, and when that just spins, and it just spins in there. So what the object is to put loads of copper grease in there, get rid of all that see that surface rust, and that's been sealed, so it's moisture that gets to it. So if you've got an electronic park brake, you want to get this done before, because these are 180 quid.
And the O-ring seal, how's that for you?
Well, the O-ring seal's perfect.
Let's have a look at it inside.
Well, there's the O-ring seal on there.
Hold on.
I'm going to put a new one on, but if you've got the existing one, you can clean it up and re-lube it to make sure it's okay. So in fact, that's going to get a wash.
What's the O-ring on that one?
There's no O-ring in this one. That's a lock mechanism, so you can take it apart, which you don't really want to take that apart. Just basically leave it as it is and put some copper grease. But that O-ring there protects the unit from getting water in. That's had no water in. Got to make sure they've got no hairline cracks as well, because if you've got a crack in that plastic, the water's going to get in damp. On the car, it sits that way, so it's, hang on a minute, it sits that way. So it is exposed to stones and that. That's the electronic park brake module. So that bit you need to look after. So we're going to clean that up and lube it with some. Well, the most important thing we've got here is the teeth. Well, this car was brand new when I had it. Can you see the little bit of the surface rust? I'm going to get rid of all the little bits of rust. The teeth are in excellent condition. Just clean it up. And what we're going to do, we're going to put some copper grease in here. I'll clean it up off camera and redo it in a minute. Well, it's a good job with servicing this electronic park brake. Copper grease has been put on there. New car. Look, there's a little crack. Now that's been done at the factory, because if I remember right, these little hex bolts are 11 Newton meters torque. Whoever's done that up at the factory has done it too tight. So what I'm going to do is put some CT1 black. It's unique waterproof bonding. I'm going to seal that up there, put a little bit in there, allow it to dry, and put a bit over the side. But you want to check there's no cracks where water can get in, so I'm just going to repair that. Now while we're refurbishing this, we're going to re-grease these carrier pins with fresh grease in. You don't want too much on there, just a very light coat. So push them in, make sure the rubber gaiter is all the way around, check for the smooth operation. That one I've already done, so those have been re-greased. Just make sure the seal is around the outside properly. I'll turn it around a minute. So that's now ready to put back onto the car. So I'm going to put that on first, then we'll put everything else back together. The electronic park brake has just got the old seal off. Now where the seal sits, you can see that black line. That all needs cleaning off, so the seal sits in there neatly. Just take your time, clean it up, put some silicone around there. Just make sure when the new seal goes on there, it is it's perfect. I'm going to put some copper grease in that thread as well, so it grips. Just take your time, perfection is key with it. Now I've cleaned up the O-ring channel where the O-ring goes. That's all been cleaned up with some silicone and a soft cotton rag, so it's all nice and clean. Now what we're going to do is put the new O-ring in there. Got to make sure it's got some nice lithium based grease around it. It's all lubricated. In there we're going to put some copper grease, and then the other bit is going to have some copper grease, and that's all been cleaned and serviced. Right, we're going to put some thread lock, medium strength, onto the nuts that hold the electronic park brake on. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this unit onto here. I'll figure out how it went on. Look at the that's the way it goes. Alright, that's clipped in. Now I notice I put a brand new seal on it. O-rings on it. Now these are 11 Newton meters. Which is literally finger tight. It's important to use thread lock onto the screws. Now they are only 11 Newton meters, which you just literally, that one's done. 11 Newton meters is hardly anything. That one's done. That's done. That's done. Now while I've got it there, what I usually do on the ends of these hex nuts, put a bit of copper grease on the head, because that's just going to protect it a little bit more from the elements. Even that one there, a bit of copper grease around it, and obviously into the head. Now where we've got to at the moment, we've cleaned all the stone shield. I'm just going to put a bit of copper grease on those heads. One there, just to protect them a little bit more. So when you want to get the stone shield off, you do not want to be drilling out these little hex nuts. Bit of copper grease on there. I'm going to get it into the head as well, that's the most important thing. Right, we're going to put the disc on now. Now what I've done on the hub, I put a very thin copper slip on there. You're not making a cake, you do not want it thick, just very, very thin to stop the rust bonding to the disc, because obviously the disc and the, that's the disc which I've cleaned up. I'm not going to put any copper slip on there, just cleaned it up, used a scalpel and a wire brush. Now that's rocking nut, obviously it's got to go over there. When you put the disc on, you've got to just marry that one up. That little grub screw is 35 Newton meters. There you go, 35 Newton meters. Let's get the old, what have we got on there? Now with the grub screw, make sure it's nice and clean. I don't care what you've got, any car, a year or 2 years, take the disc off, because that will actually corrode, and you do not want that thing. I'm going to put a little bit of copper slip onto that, because it's going to help it prevent it from going rusty. As I said, you only want a little bit on, very small amounts of copper grease. Make sure the disc is seated. Alright, she's on, but I'm just going to get a rubber mallet. I know the disc is on, but because I've cleaned all the matting surfaces, it's a nice fit at the moment. What I'm going to do is just basically do this up a little bit before we get to the torque setting. I've got the wrong nuts. T20 I think this was. No, it's a T150 this one is. So I've got a bit of copper grease on there. Only a small amount. We know this is 35 Newton meters. Right, there we go. Let's get the torquey. Again, good quality snap-on. She's set to 35 Newton meters. The disc is on square. Right, let's do it up. Now this one, it's got the green lights, but you've got audio as well. So wait till the lights come on. There's one. Let's just get it there. Hold the torque wrench nicely. 2. I'll have to hold the disc a bit. Let me just get a something to hold that disc. Look at that. 33.5 at the moment. Love this torque wrench. Right, so you're going to wait. 35 it's set on. There you go. And the torque value of that, 35.1. What a bit of kit. On the carrier retaining bolts, make sure you've got some thread lock on them. They do come with thread lock, but I like to put a little bit of new paste on. The hardest one to ever do is always the bottom one. Lining it up, which is in. Now with the thread, always do it up with your hand. And the socket we're using is a 15mm Premier with the teeth in. Use good quality sockets. So these are the carrier retaining bolts. So these are done up to 110 Newton meters plus 120 degree angle on top. So now I've got them in, I'm just going to whiz them up before I put the torque wrench on with the ratchet, just to speed things up. Nuts are in. It's actually, they are 110 Newton meters plus 120 degree. So 47, 60, 80, they're 110 we've got to get them to. Dial that up. Right, 110 Newton meters. And we've got a backlight on there as well, 110. So 110 plus 120. So on we go. So we're looking at the lights and we're listening to the sound. One light showing. Right, here we go. 2 lights. 3 lights. You need a torque wrench, I'll tell you. There we go. That's the one done. Look at the setting on there. 110.9. How accurate is that? So let's do another one. Let's reset itself. Okay, this snap-on, by the way, is so small and it's so easy to get into places. And the other thing about it, let me just pull this out a minute. It's got a swivel head on it, which makes it so useful for getting into little bits you can't get to. I mean, what a snap-on. So I'm looking at the lights. 1 light's on, 2 lights on. Reset it. 2, 3. Reset it. there we go. Let's see what it says. 110.3. How about that? So let's reset that now. Now I'm going to do a 120 degree angle on this. So let me go on to angles. Another important part of your braking system is your shims, nice and clean. So the brake shoes, they will move in the carrier. So instead of putting new ones in, I'll clean these up because obviously the car's fairly new. I'm going to put some copper grease onto the pads so they slip. First of all is put these back into the... so we're going to put these in. You get them exactly halfway in the... you don't want them touching the disc. They'll click into place. That one's in. And the bottom one, again, get them halfway. Make sure exactly halfway. That's it. They're in. Look at that, nice and clean. So the next thing to do, we're going to put the pads in, put some copper slip onto the pads. Right, we've actually put the pads in. A little bit of copper slip on the bottom contact areas. Make sure you get the pads around the same way. So that's ready to go back in. We're going to push the piston back in with a tool at the moment, but obviously don't forget to undo the reservoir cap. We're going to push it in about 2 or 3 millimeters to help slide on the caliper, but that's all done. So those have been done up to the carrier bolts 110 Newton meters with 120 degree angle on top. These are going to be 35 Newton meters, both of those, and also you've got the electric connections for the electronic park brake. So that's finished. 2 nuts on top. We need a 17mm, and you need the torque wrench. You're going to set that to 35 Newton meters. 17mm goes in there. Nice close shot of this now. Now again, with this snap-on, you don't need to see the screen because you've got the audio bleeps and you've got the lights as well. So get him on. Lovely short torque wrench. So $35.4. How about that? 0.4. Right, it's re-zeroed. So these are 35. So new bolts, obviously, because obviously they stretch. So it's set on 35. You're listening. $35.3. Amazing. How about that? Simple as that. Job done, that is. Obviously, don't forget to take off the strap you held the caliper with. The last thing we've got to do is the electronic park brake switch. Has got to go in. Now we know the pads have got 20% wear. And one last thing, since the wheel's been torqued up, little test drive we've done, 3-mile test drive. We've re-torqued the wheels up to 140. What you want to do is use one of these to check you haven't got any binding brakes. So obviously do the caliper as well. You've got to get the 2 dots lined up and it'll give you an accurate reading. Now all the discs are the same. So every now and again, just check your calipers and your discs to make sure you've got nothing binding. Very useful tool to have. There you go.